Here's a question. Would you like to live in the tropical rainforest?
Well, I would, but I wouldn't because all the poison animals and all the dangerous animals that I've heard of, well, kinda would, but not that much.
I would like to, but you would need to have the certain things to live there because, like Cassie said, the dangerous animals, if they were there, you need stuff to protect yourself. But it would be really good if you lived there because you could still put your, make a house up high, in the trees, on the branches, so that the animals can't get up that high to you.
True. I would like to, but the same as Cassie, I wouldn't really because there's quite dangerous animals and there's poisonous animals and you would maybe get poisoned and then you would need to you'd be ill.
I wouldn't like to because there's all the wild animals and then you could
attack you.
Yeah.
Callum.
I kind of would like to. If I could build power cables and buy everything.
It's really good, but you would have to have all the medications to help you, but still, if you had the snakes, it would be scary.
Yeah, you would need to have all the medications if you catch a disease or anything.
And you would have to have the weapons.
I found out in the computer last night that the Yanomami tribe, the poison arrow frog, they hold it very carefully and then the frog thinks, oh, they're attacking me, and it gives off their poison and they get their poison dart and then they go and it goes and it kills animals. Well, you would have to have the confidence and the courage to do that.
Okay, so we'll move on a little bit. We are going to continue to think about that film clip and we're going to consider how we might develop those learning to talk skills and enhance the learning through talk. And I'm going to focus just on 4 aspects. We're going to look at the purpose of the talk, the structure, some scaffolds, and then finally feedback. So next slide, we're going to consider the purpose of the talk. So this task, we can really think about bundling E's and O's. So we've bundled some literacy E's and O's for listening and talking, and also the context of the talk. So around tropical rainforests, we can use this E's and O's from the social subjects, and that's just to demonstrate that the bundling E's and O's is really important as we consider learning through and learning to talk. Next slide. Then we're going to think about the structure of the task. So we're going to think about what was the stimulus, what was the impact, for example, of the choice of grouping, what scaffolds were in place, and what opportunities for feedback were there. So thinking now about the question posed, and I'm not sure if you quite caught the question because I know that the sound wasn't quite right at the start. But the question was, would you like to live in a tropical rainforest? And so when we think about that question, it's quite closed. They could have easily answered yes or no. So reframing the question to a statement. Laura, would you mind just moving that slide on? Sorry, I just noticed. Reframing the question to a statement like the one on this slide generates different responses. So living in tropical rainforests would be good, agree or disagree, and give reasons for your answer. Also, it's really important to consider what other stimuli could be used. So I've popped a picture prompt on here to support anyone who needs support with the content of the discussion. And that allows them to engage by using a visual to support their thinking. Other stimuli might be a film clip or a concept cartoon, lots of different ideas for using a stimulus, and there's more ideas that we'll explore later. And we obviously know that one of those young people were really keen and had obviously done a little bit of research around this topic the night before, and that was adding to her discussion. Next slide, thanks Laura. Whenever you think about a talk task, we need to think about which grouping will best support the type of talk you plan to take place. So for example, how might children be able to build on or exchange a range of ideas if they're placed in a pair, for example? What roles could be given to a trio? If children are sitting in a group, how can they be supported to have an appropriate balance of interactions? So thinking about the group of learners in the film we just watched, there were 5 children sitting in an L shape around a table. If you were to do this task again, how might you group the children to support different types of interactions? So it is a really important thing to consider, so that you do think about the purpose of the talk and what you want to get out of the talk and how you're going to group children to make best use of that purpose of talk. Thanks, Laura. It's also helpful to introduce pupils to different roles you might take within a discussion, and I really like this work from Voice 21, which helps children to consider this and also gives them some sentence stems to support. You might only introduce 2 roles at a time and build this up over time, so they might start with, say, builder and clarifier, for example, and then you would introduce other roles as they become familiar and confident. You can also use it to set personal targets. For example, you might say, Jayden, next time I would like you to challenge or probe someone's idea. So thinking about returning to that group of learners in the film clip, if they had been given these roles, how might that have changed the quality of the discussion? That's a helpful way to think about how we set up our talk tasks. Okay, thanks, Laura. Now going to think about some possible scaffolds to support listening and talking, and I think we're all familiar with scaffolds in writing, but how do we also prepare and support children for listening and talking? So here's just a few ideas. We can use sentence stems like the ones that we just saw on the previous slide. We can put up key vocabulary, so for example for the task we just watched, you might have wanted to put some subject-specific vocabulary around the rainforest to really improve that quality of the talk. You can also model, so you can demonstrate to your children how you can probe or clarify or summarise in a discussion, and it's really important modelling is really important. We know the importance of that in writing, and that's equally important to model talk and how different talk roles can be demonstrated. It's really important that children have the knowledge they need before they discuss something. So again, that might be they read something, or they watch a film, or you do some pre-teaching or researching, for example. And we've already used a photograph earlier just to enhance that knowledge and to support learners in that discussion. And finally, making talk visible. The next slide just shows a couple of ideas around how we do that. How do we help pupils to see how the discussion progressed? It's easy to do this with, for example, a piece of writing, as there's something physical to look at. But talk's much more difficult. So here are some possible suggestions, and you may have others that you can share in the chat. So using a counter every time you talk can show pupils the number of contributions they've made. Or they may put a counter on one of those discussion roles as they use it. So if they've challenged someone or built on someone's idea, then they can put a counter on this role, and it just shows them the range of different types of talk and discussion roles that they've taken within that talk task. Passing the string to someone every time they talk can also help pupils see the flow of the conversation and also how many times they contributed. Also, you can use Lego blocks, so if you have your own colour of Lego block, again you can show how you've built on another person's idea by placing your Lego block on theirs, or if you instigate a new line of thought, again you just put a new tower, if you like, of Lego, and all of these ideas can really help talk be much more visible to learners and help them reflect then on the discussion they've just had. Moving on now to feedback, which is really important and helpful for pupils really to reflect on their listening and talking skills. So they might reflect on a personal target set, or the different roles they took within the discussion, or the success criteria they set for the discussion. And this next slide It's really helpful to ask children to think about some ground rules or guidelines for discussion, and in that way you've set up an opportunity to co-create success criteria for the discussion task. Sometimes one idea I've had is let children start a discussion and then after a few minutes stop and think about what's not going well, and then from there generate those success criteria so that that they have an effective discussion, and that's a one way to do it. Another way is just to model when a discussion goes wrong, and you can use a little film clip for that, or just show them when discussion doesn't go well. So it's a really helpful little tool just to make that visible to children as well. Got another assessment tool here. This is called the Harkness, and it's a really useful tool for assessment and also for making talk visible for reflection. And the oval here represents the table or the seating arrangement, and each pupil's initial is placed around the edge, and every time they talk a line is drawn. And you can ask a pupil to undertake this task, or as a teacher you can devise a key for recording the types of interactions that are taking place. So in this way you have a record and an assessment that you can use to provide formative feedback to the learners after the discussion. It can also be a really helpful task for a dominant talker to undertake, so to allow others to speak, but they still have a purpose within the discussion. And your observer key can be adapted in line with the benchmarks for your level. So it's a really useful tool. Okay, so thinking back to the film, which of the Odyssey skills would you want the group of learners to focus on next time, thinking about those that framework, or which structures or scaffolds might you introduce to either support or challenge individuals? And again, if you've got other ideas that you've used successfully in your classroom, then please just pop them in the chat. We really love to hear from you.